I'm so glad to see you. We've been in Kareem's business for a few years now, and I think he's really happy that the camera's not rolling anymore. But anyway, thank you everybody for participating in this post-screening discussion. And I think I want to borrow Michael's idea to start things, and I'm sorry we're going to skip intros, but I would just love for each of you to speak to a passion point that jumped out at you from the film. So really one or two passion points that really resonated with you from the film and that connects with your very deep and I think diverse experience in the education world. Michael, I'm going to let you start.
Is the mic on?
No.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
I'm going to go from a lens of being a site leader who is seeking to work with teachers to deliver the correct curriculum, and also students who are to have that fire and that passion awakened. So two things, giving teachers agency to be able to look and see and change instruction. What I'm hearing from that teacher in Markham, I used to teach at Frick Middle School, not too far from there, the fact that she felt empowered. You can't begin to imagine what that means to her as a career and what she can do as a future in that school, and the many of children that she will impact in East Oakland that will travel through her classroom. That's one passion point. And the other is the students. More times than not, we hold these random conversations of our curriculum, but we lose sight of the internal dialogue that students have when they engage in curriculum. And I saw children who were having internal dialogue that was saying that they validated who they were as learners, and you cannot put that fire out. Once you light that fire, you just step back and let it run. Those are my two passions.
Oh, I love that. And since Michael brought this up, I just want to give a shout out to Ms. Sabrina Kazi, who's in our audience tonight. Jenny Lam, passion points for you.
So many throughout the whole film, and thank you. And Kareem, really, it was you and how are just crisp and clear you were about literacy is absolutely the social justice issue of all of our lifetime. As someone who's dedicated my entire adult life to justice and equity, now being in the role of not only serving on the school board, but leading the Board of Education right now and settling on our next 5 years of our priorities and goals, thank you. Thank you for giving me that courage, giving my colleagues, and I want to recognize my colleagues, my Commissioners Matomedy and Weissman Ward, for their leadership and their work in the last 6 months to get us where we are at the board governance level. Another passion point was around our educators. It really brought back for me, I'm a daughter of immigrants, English learner myself. The day that I started kindergarten, did not speak one word of English. And bringing back, I'm a child of the 70s, learning my alphabet through public broadcasting. And I am so thankful for my kindergarten and first grade teacher, Mrs. Williams, born and raised in the East Bay. And it was that structured, literacy that I know that she broke down for us there were 10 of us in that first grade class in the afternoon, where she got to spend time of differentiated teaching and learning. And that was over, dare I say this, over 40 years ago now. So those are my passion points, and I just feel so fortunate and privileged to be here this afternoon.
Thanks, Jenny. So it sounds as though the clips from Electric Company and Sesame Street and the phonemic awareness, the phonics, those pieces really spoke to you as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Doug, what about passion points for you from the film?
I try and keep things very simple for myself because I'm kind of one of those
rabbit hole people that can take something and that can serve me when I'm trying to find out about actually what's going on. But keeping it about the students and the children has always been very helpful for me. I really liked Kareem's point when you're talking about, this isn't just, these kids and these kids. It's like, you wouldn't have soccer moms paying 20, 30, K to get their kids help to read. And I'm like, exactly. I said, we were able to help my two boys who had an incredible amount of difficulty learn to read, but I had an incredible amount of support and help from my family. And I'm working with kids that don't have that at all. And there are so many conversations that are all about up here, and it stops being about our students and about the kids and about some politics or about the adults. It basically ends up being about the adults and their feelings instead of the students and their experience with what they're doing, or rather not doing and not getting within the school system. So for me, it's about the kids. I used to go to IEP meetings, educational plan meetings for my own two boys, and the poor district people, I made a 33 slide PowerPoint presentation, and the first slide was of my son, right? And I bought food, and it was like they had to sit through that. So that's been helpful, and I'm sticking with that for 26 years in the district. So.
Kareem, you've seen the film a couple of times.
Yeah, I haven't seen that version of it. Okay, so related to what you were saying, so my brother asked me to come to my nephew's IEP meeting because I'm the education guy, and he and his wife felt intimidated by the whole school thing. We're gonna go down here, his wife was gonna talk over our head, they're gonna talk to us like we're small, that we don't know anything, and man, I don't even wanna, can you just come down here, like put a force field around it, can you just handle it, please? I go down there, and we're not gonna play this game, right? So families have different, so one passion point is that families need access and they need to be respected. There is something, we can talk about that later. The other passion point is, so I want to lift up Sabrina. I know she's here, we gave her a shout out earlier, but the amount of courage, so the other one is courage. What the film didn't show is she didn't have tenure at the time. And she was doing something different than what everybody else was talking. Those of you who work in schools know what that means. Okay? And so we as an NAACP, we protect whistleblowers. It's kind of our jam. It's a civil rights issue. But from her perspective, we're not in that building all the time. She's in there with her, the principal, the coach, the assistant superintendent, the chief, all of the people. And the union, like, what can they do? She don't have tenure. So the amount of courage it takes in these different contexts to stand up and do right by kids, it shouldn't take that much courage. But I have a ton of respect for her and those educators who are willing to press pause on business as usual and say, hold on a second, hold on, what's really going on? What's underneath this and what do I have to do to make a difference? So shout out to Sabrina and other educators who are willing to show that kind of courage.
Beautiful, beautiful thoughts. I'm going to ask just one more question to the panelists, and then we're going to open it up to you with our limited time, and then we'll have time to mingle over refreshments as well. But as we did our pre-planning meeting, Michael, again, we talked about passion points and pain points. And I think with passion points that resonate with us in our hearts, so does pain, because of all the work that has happened. And hopefully, as we started the film, we talked about what can a documentary film do. It can be a catalyst to create conversation, but really eventually to push forward with change, and change comes with action. So let's just talk briefly, and maybe we will mix it up and start with you, Mr. Weaver, first. But let's talk about the biggest pain point comes through from the stories in the film and connects to our work today, and what action really has to come to change that pain point. And we can do popcorn if you're not ready. Okay.
So a big pain point is the default setting. The default setting is just be cool. Everybody would just stay in their lane. We can all get through this. You know, we're gonna get through this board meeting, we're gonna get through this professional development, we're gonna get through this report card marking period, we're gonna get through this school year, we're gonna get to the, just be cool. I know the parents may kick up a little dust, okay, but they're gonna move on to the next year anyway. Just ride this thing. I'm telling you, that's the operating principle in most schools. It's a system, it's an institution. And so disrupting the default setting, finding people and stakeholders who are willing to do that is very challenging, because we all are kind of tied to this entity. And the other part of that is going together. So you may have seen at the stakeholder meeting, the meeting where we all went over to my partner Liza's house, and we met. You know, those different organizations represented there. Different ethnic groups were represented there. That's not normal, because we don't get along very well. We don't watch the same channels. We don't read the same news. We don't speak the same languages. We have different income levels. We have different backgrounds and cultures and history and all that. And sometimes we just don't get along. So can we come together for any reason? That's the biggest pain point. There's no way this could happen if we weren't so divided. That's the biggest challenge. And so getting people on the same page to put their kids first. And that includes folks who are perceived to have privilege. Guess what? Their kids not reading either. Just because they go to they don't want to spend that money. You hear a lot of people say, man, I get in trouble for saying this. You can't protect them, wife. Look, listen, we have to recognize when we have common cause. There's enough that we don't agree on. We ought to at least recognize when we do agree on something. Marriages break up over this. The dissonance that's created in families when a child is struggling, you don't know what to do and how to help them. And we're spending, $70, $100, $200 twice a week for, it adds up. And so we have to work together. If we work together, that's when you can go to a board meeting. That's when you can meet people behind the scenes, going collectively. Otherwise, it's business as usual. It's one interest group want this and another interest group want that, and that's not going to get it done.
So beautiful, Kareem. What I'm hearing you say, and actually shout out to Megan, because Decoding Dyslexia was at that meeting, and 2 other organizations I think that are here tonight were at their partnership meeting, and what I'm hearing you say is really the biggest pain point is that we've got to save our babies, and this is a bipartisan issue. It's not a it's not even a partisan issue. It should be everyone who is on the same page, because this is about evidence-based science that is grounded, that shows how we teach our kids to read. Yeah, beautiful. Doug?
I was just going to add on to that, because when we don't have that, for the longest time, I just felt like some big mouth, at my school who was, perceived, at times as, oh, here's Doug, he's just this know-it-all who,
Has a 31 PowerPoint slide.
But then, there was no conversation about it. One, because they weren't actually able to have the conversation because everything was focused over here. And so there weren't even any conversations to be had. I remember when I first met Megan, and I was a little bit, because when you are involved in this work, where we are now with, at least in my district, where they're beginning to look at a new adoption, for me, that was like 20 years ago. I'm way over here now, so sometimes having to come back to where we all meet up, at first I was like, oh, but, after when the pandemic hit and people started kind of coming together in these groups and talking more, and there were conversations, and I can't tell you how much of a backpack just fell off my back, like, oh, that whole, it sounds trite when people go, oh, I know that you're so alone, but it was really true. I've been fighting this for so long at my school side, with other people, with the administration, and, I mean, most of my colleagues, got it, but, admin, it was so difficult, and they weren't nice about it when you tried to talk to them. They weren't nice.
So with that pain point, Doug, just share quickly, what do you feel right now needs to be the action to really address it? It sounds like you don't feel as alone, and you feel as though there are more allies in the fight.
Well, I'm always tending to focus on, I'm planning on, the things that might go wrong, so, we can, if and when they do, we have a plan to address those things, as opposed to, just kind of okay, yes, we're going to be adopting a new ELA curriculum, and it's gonna follow the Ed Report standards, and it has to meet expectations and all of those things, but I've already been through an adoption, back in 2001 with the district, and that wasn't pretty either, and it didn't really matter that we adopted, because the admin was not on board with it. There was a speech that was given at that adoption where the person said, basically, if you choose this one over this one, it will be a travesty, and a lot of people that were there did not have the knowledge about literacy to stand up and say, you know what, you kind of need to sit down right now. So I'm sort of just cautiously optimistic, but I'm really, at a point now where I'm seeing some changes happening both at my site and in the district and in conversations, and I'm seeing things loosen a little bit. And so I'm trying to find the movement within that loosening to, be supportive and draw people in and begin to kind of force the conversations a little bit as best as I know how.
So it sounds as though really what Kareem was mentioning too is how you feel, that everyone has to be in this together, and you have to have the support from admin. I mean, there's so many different layers, but it can't just be the teachers.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Absolutely.
Madam President.
So much to be able to share. I think one of the greatest pain points is, and Commissioner Tommy just last Saturday at our 6-hour board meeting, yes, we work on Saturdays and in the summer, was around the growth mindset of the adults in the system. And that is something that we as a governing board right now, or as a board of education, are tackling and really owning we represent the values and the principles of the community. And that's where this coming Tuesday, as mentioned, we're looking to adopt our 5-year goals, and one of them is focused in literacy, particularly around 3rd grade literacy. And this is part of the building blocks, I think, that Doug's been involved in for a very long time, and Michael as well. And it's not just only about high stakes standardized testing. I want to be really clear about this. It's not about our children not doing what we believe each and every child has the ability and desire to fully learn. And our educators are doing everything that they possibly can in the classroom each and every day as well. So it's really about both the policies that we're passing, we're setting forward for the district, but how are we lining up the resources, the professional development, the realities of the workforce crisis that we're facing as a district. And that's those tough conversations that we're gonna have moving forward. So if we're looking at a 3rd grade literacy proficiency cell level of 70%, which is pretty much twice of what originally proposed by the superintendent and his staff. That means that the district is likely going to have to double those investments for literacy. You cannot expect, you just increase the goals and it's just gonna happen without the investment and the people to supporting the people behind it. So that's gonna be that pain point, I can assure, that is coming forward. But I also wanted to name that the literacy audit finding that we just conducted that was presented in May of 2022 was the first time ever we did an external literacy audit. It's like sometimes I'm shocked at some of the things that I learned as a board member. But I tell my colleagues to say they're not so shocked. And so there's so much, I think, systems change and that catalyst that we're looking to lead as Board of Education members right now, and really working from our sites on up.
Thanks, Jenny. So it sounds like money, for sure, to increase the literacy rates. I mean, that's all of our goal, right? And then we've gotta think about how truly tangibly do we get 3Qing off the shelves completely and forever out of curriculum? How do we then again push for that curriculum change? And that's, I mean, I hear you saying that, and those are the things that I think together we have to really address.
And the transparency of the monitoring. You
Yes.
can't expect to do annual reports and then within the third grade, it's just gonna happen. The longitudinal data is so key, and that's what we heard time and time again in the community sessions that we did with our educators who mentioned it's not just about learning about the third graders of that year, but how are we really supporting our children from pre-kindergarten, transitional kindergarten on. The fact that another statistic that our data director just gave us last Saturday during a board meeting, it is unacceptable that African American children at the end of kindergarten and Pacific Islander kindergartners, nearly 100%, 97% of those children, if they do not meet that year-end kindergarten benchmark, they do not meet it by third grade. That is unacceptable to me. Why are we not doing the targeted interventions, early interventions? And again, it is not about it's the fault of the system. How are we not supporting our children and our educators and our leaders at our sites?
Michael.
Oh, I have so many pain points. One, Douglas, I would love for you to have been in my school. I've never been to an IEP meeting where Pam brought food. A 33 slide PowerPoint. I do want to echo the one thing that you did share. Administration. I think administrators, and this is a point, I did a ed talk in SFUSD about 4 years ago around this very thing, and somebody said I could get in trouble for what I shared. If something is going to happen at a school site, the administrators are the ones who make it happen. Doesn't make a difference what the board says, doesn't make a difference what CNI. Administrators put money, they put time, they let people do their professional development. If a teacher wants to try something new, an administrator can let that person try something new and not worry about losing your job. Administrators are so key. But many of our administrators are not educational focused. They're individuals who've risen to the top because it's time for them to make more money. And what we're talking about is instruction. The one thing that administrators sit over, it's not the keys to the building. We sit over instruction. My job is to evaluate the teachers in the building in terms of what they teach, how they impact children, and if I don't know what the hell I'm doing as an administrator, I cannot lean into that. I am an education specialist. I'm certified by the state of California. I did special education, SDC, RSP, and one of the things that I taught was the learning center model. And what do you do in the learning center model? You specifically teach to the child's needs related to their goals in their IEP. We're talking about reading, literacy. We're talking about writing with respect to literacy, their ability to pronounce and listen. We're talking about their math goals. How many administrators at our school sites can actually do that? So here's my pain point. I sit uniquely at the position of the prison to school pipeline, school to prison pipeline. I'm in middle school. So when kids are not taught in elementary school, and that internal dialogue that I spoke about earlier, it begins this secondary thing where maybe I'm not good at school or maybe my teacher hates me. They arrive at middle school. And in middle school, there's a unique conjunction of problems. Teachers are not taught to teach reading. They're taught to teach kids to learn from reading. And we have kids in our schools at the middle school level who need to be taught
how to read. We are quickening the school to prison pipeline at the middle school level because our teachers can't teach reading. And how many administrators are leaning in and saying, hey, that my middle school teachers, math, science, ELA, social studies, that you need to learn how to teach literacy, right? That we need to lean into phonemic awareness, right? When I do demo lessons for my teachers, because my teachers really struggle. I'm at MLK Middle School, which mimics where I taught my 21 years in Oakland. I only taught in East Oakland and West Oakland. And then I come up here, they hire me in the southeast section of San Francisco. And my teachers struggle. And we have these amazing PDs. Like, if you come to our PDs, like, oh my God, MLK has it going on. So I taught a demo lesson for a teacher, and we looked at the student work afterwards. Inventive spelling, kids not knowing any concepts of print. They didn't know where to capitalize. They didn't know about proper nouns. And I was like, holy crap. I turned to the teacher, I said, our PDs are useless to you, right? And we are a school, if you came to our PDs were amazing. But they're not beneficial to students and teachers, and that's what we're there to do. And that's an administrative issue.
I just want to add one thing. So we hear a lot about priorities and strategic plans and all that. And I tell people, I really don't want to hear about your values or your mission statement. And all that all what's on the website. Show me your curriculum, your budget, and your schedule. I'll tell you what your priorities are. What are the tools that we provide our educators? Does it line up? How much prep time do they have? And how much does it take to actually fully implement this thing? If they don't line up, you just virtue signal. Does it have evidence of actually working for kids? Most of them do not, because they know the secret, which is the districts don't even care about the evidence. The brochure's good, everybody's happy. So the other thing, the other pain point, just one more time is, and this is one, is that, so the research shows that about 35 to 40% of folks are going to learn to read one way or the other, regardless of the curriculum. Lots of different ways. You hear people say there's no one way, they're right. About 35 is some Montessori method. Some do it this way, that way, fine. About 35 to 40%, if they're taught something consistently, they'll get it. Okay. They're the folks running the schools. That's us. The other people never had a chance. So who's running the show? Who's making the rules? I guarantee you have an advocate. If you had a board that was filled with parents who had dyslexic kids, man, that thing would be all the way different. I'm trying to tell you, the reason why I say that is because their hand is close to the fire. When you have to wrestle with the realities of this thing, whether it's yourself or your kids or whatever, whoever you're associated with, it hits differently. But the folks in charge, for the most part, it worked for them. And so intellectually, they can conceive how, man, maybe things aren't right. Let's write a white paper about it. Let's get a commission to study. Let's do this, let's do that. But it just doesn't hit the same. And so what happens is things are allowed to perpetuate because oftentimes they don't see the connection, so we get distracted in the board meeting. Or the PD is about something else. We argue about, we major in minors because we can't keep the main thing because the people who have most impacts aren't anywhere in the conversation. That's the pain point. And we have to be able to, so one last thing is that I was in San Francisco. I grew up, I went to church in this church called San Francisco Christian Center. Yeah. And that was my home church. And, we had a children's program. And part of what that was you had to read. You had to read the tracts and this and that and everything. And so they actually went about teaching us, not just this, but how to read. A lot of our community institutions, are unable or are distracted, and they're not doing what they can do to support. I'm not taking the responsibility of the school district. I'm just saying that a lot of us collectively have taken our eyes off the ball. Things that we used to do to supplement as a community, we're too busy watching the game. We're too busy watching cable TV. Kids can't read, huh? What's the score? What's the news? What's the news? What do you call it? No. The results for who's gonna win the election. Poll, what's the poll say? What's the poll say? Anyway, so those are some other obstacles.
I mean, I think you're bringing up such a great point, Kareem, right? And hopefully that's what you're walking away with from the Right to Read, that this is really about evidence-based reading instruction. But when you look at the amazing Hunter family and that beautiful Ivy who steals the show every time she's on screen, their family, this is also about parent engagement and advocacy, right? And it goes back to, I think, many of the points, which is it takes all of us to do this, and it takes having those conversations with Ivy, teaching her letters, you know, when she's so young and is ready to be a princess engineer in her life, right? So beautifully said, Kareem. I want to open it up to you and have a couple of questions, and then I know we need to move.
Can I make a quick comment before we go?
Yes, please, Michael.
So I just want to give a plug to community schools, because community schools bring more voice in, and those parents bringing their voices to the table, being able to situate, right, the right to read within the community schools model is going to do different things. So I just wanted to put that out there and back on.
I love that. So let's take a couple of quick questions, and then we can move out into the lobby. I know the library is being so patient with, oh, we have them here? Fantastic. Okay, we are really running out of time. What lessons can we take away from OUSD or other districts that have already begun their transition to instruction aligned to the science of reading that is evidence-based? Yeah, start it. Sure.
What's the reading curriculum in SFU? Let me tell
So
you.
we can throw units of study in the trash.
Let me tell
Is
you.
that the first?
And that's the first one.
Okay.
You gotta look at curriculum. And you can learn that from OUSD. The second thing, and not that we're perfect, I don't like what we picked, but it was way better than what we had. Anyway, the second thing we have to learn from, I think, Oakland and this movie is that we have to be able to go together. We have to. It's not our default setting. Black families come in at the board meeting, oh, you're an angry black father or mother. Always. White folks come in, oh, you got privilege. Latinos come in, oh, you can't speak English. What are you just a special interest group. Asians come in, oh, you got money and you got this and you got privilege and you got this and you're gonna be quiet anyway in a couple of days, so we're gonna ignore you till you flame out. That man, you gotta go together. When you go together and say, look, all our kids means all our kids. And what's gonna get? So that's what you can learn, and it's not easy. We didn't always get along with them. You saw nice people. Sometimes people want to focus on, and even look, well, what about culture and culturally relevant this and that? And we need books with mirrors and windows and all. Okay, cool. Man, they can't read. I don't want them. I love a good Dr. King book as well as anybody else, but I want my children to be able to read about Dr. King. You understand what I'm saying? So that's the biggest lesson you can learn. You've got to go together, which is not easy to do.
Beautiful, beautiful. Kareem, I would love just a couple more thoughts briefly on this question. Liza and I were having a great conversation and coming over here. And I think if San Francisco is using Lucy Calkins' units of study, first of all, we never want teachers to feel as though they are not valued. You are our heroes. And you do it every day, and you are given a curriculum, and it is very hard when you're given a curriculum that is ineffective, right? And it isn't working and hasn't done the research. But what do you think teachers should do when they have this curriculum, Kareem, that clearly is still encouraging guessing and cueing and context? Like, how should teachers stand up and say no more? Or what do you suggest they do?
I'm gonna take that question to Sabrina.
Read.
Yeah, so when the district has you to do one thing, right? Sorry, sis, put you on the spotlight. But they have you to do one thing, and you know it's not working for the kid. I mean, you know it. What do you do as an educator?
I threw it out the window.
That's right.
I flew under the radar. I went to science and did what I knew had to be done for kids.
She said that like it's no big deal.
Yeah, so there we go,
It's a big deal.
right? I just, I want teachers to hear that this is not about blame, this is not about you
Teachers
and
are
the
being
work you're
asked,
doing.
excuse me,
Yeah, go.
teachers
No,
are being
please.
basically asked to make bricks without straw.
Yes.
They have these materials, and you're supposed to do it. That's the board, the superintendent, the chief academic officer. You don't do it, you get in trouble. Right now, especially if you're getting evaluated. So what are you gonna do? That's why you need allies. Right? And your administrator may or may not be on board.
That's right.
Okay, let's be real about that. Your administrator may be on some whole different stuff. So that's why, groups like the NAACP. I mentioned Christian Center. Like, there are institutions in the community that actually do care about the kids reading. And so ping them. Ask them for help. Ask them for support. Ask them for covering. Get involved. That's the best way to kind of protect yourself from all that type of stuff as you go about your journey.
Beautiful. We have to wrap up. The library has been so generous. We're gonna have a reception out in the foyer area. So please, I'm sticking around. I think all of our panelists are. Bree, are you able to stay and mingle for a little bit with other teachers and people who might want to talk with you? Okay, great. Thank you so much for coming.